Hello, and thanks for listening to my lightning talk. Today I'm going to talk about what we're calling asynchronous professional development for asynchronous learning and assessment, what we're calling APD for ALA. This is work that I've done with my doctoral students, Grant Chartrand, Trip Harris. This work was funded by a CARES Act grant from the governor's office from the state of Indiana to the Office of School Partnerships. Mike Beam led the larger project. Rebecca Ito led the Course Development Academy for which this course was developed. What I'd like to show you today is an innovative course that we developed to solve a big problem that we were presented with this $2 million grant. We needed to train 150 secondary teachers with no online experience to develop 40 new asynchronous online courses. These courses needed to be interactive. They could only use open educational resources. There was no new content or no commercial content, and they needed to include formative assessments and to work in both Canvas and Google Classroom. One of the biggest constraints is we had only about 3 weeks to do the professional development. We were on a very tight time frame. The PD had to be asynchronous, but we were hoping that along the way we would build an informal community of practice and network of expert teachers around the state who had developed these shared courses. Our solution to this problem was a self-paced course in Canvas and Google Classroom that we called Responsive Engagement and Virtual Learner Assessment. It consisted of 4 modules, and each of these modules embraced what we felt was a very innovative approach to professional development. And I'll show you, but to introduce it, we're calling it Introduce Experience Template Steps. And the key thing is that educators were given the opportunity to experience the forms of engagement or assessment prior to being given templates and step-by-step instructions to do the same with assignments or assessments for their own students. We also gave them an article that we published in Information and Learning Sciences that we published with high school teachers that we had worked with that was a very step-by-step, very introductory approach to our underlying approach. You can see our approach in the titles of the assignments within the first module. We introduce them to this notion of responsive engagement. We introduce them to social annotation. It's a particular technique for engaging students. Then we have them experience the social annotation using course readings, much like we would expect them to do for their own students. And then we give them the hands-on, step-by-step guidance. So here you see, this is the learn all about engagement. So our courses are fairly text heavy. They needed to be. We got some feedback from students that they would have preferred videos, and we might consider making those. But it's, as you may know, it's a lot easier to write text than it is to create good videos. One of the things we wanted to do in this course was to help them see the difference between what it means to use a discussion forum and what it means to do social annotation directly on resources or student artifacts. And so we had them actually go to a discussion forum and introduce themselves to their classmates so that a reference point for our characterization of how discussion forums actually can be quite difficult. Then we introduced them to social annotation, described social annotation, and then we sent them to Perusall, where we had them annotate first the syllabus from the course. We do this in a lot of our uses of social annotation. Now, if you look on the upper right, you can see this. I think this one will be most relevant. So the underlying engagement framework draws on the late Randy Engel's notion of expansive framing. Essentially, what we have students do in this case, we introduce them to expansive framing by having them identify which of the learning outcomes in this workshop are going to be most relevant to them and to justify their selection in a way that says something about them as an educator, what they teach, and what kinds of students they work with. After that, we had them experience social annotation again with an introductory assignment, introductory reading from EDUCAUSE. And there you can see again, I think this is important to understand. There's another, that ranking has happened there. And I, as the instructor, went in and actually upvoted this thread because it was a good example of this kind of engagement where people were finding connections with outside of the course with the content that they were learning. And after that, then, so the final assignment is this hands-on, and we walk them through. And by the way, these are optional in the IU Expand course, but these were required for the workshop participants because they were compensated for the work that they were doing. So there you can see the instructions for the advanced assignment. We walk them through doing the syllabus for their course, and then an introductory, and there the advanced. And there you see the hot link there goes to uh, instructions that they can just cut and paste and modify for their own assignment. And this proved to be very effective and a very quick way to get educators using social annotation in a very short period of time. Similarly, for the virtual formative assessment module, right, so one of the things that we wanted to tackle here was particularly with Canvas that a lot of people aren't aware of, that Canvas actually has 10 different item formats, including selected and constructed response, and 4 different quiz formats. There you see that we're introducing them to the ungraded survey and the practice quiz. Well, that's 40 different combinations, and they function differently in formative versus summative assessments. And that's really just overwhelming for many people who are new to a learning management system. And so it's really important that they get to experience those differences. So there we explain, we introduce them to the different options in Canvas quiz, and then they actually experience it. So you can see there's an example. So we're giving them formative assessments, in this case about formative assessment. It gets a little meta, but that's all right. And so notice we see complete this quiz twice. And so we really went far out of our way to have them experience what we felt were the most important things for them to experience before creating formative assessments for their own students. And then similarly, following the same structure, we give them the hands-on create. We provide them with very step-by-step guidelines, and we provide them again with a template. These are the suggested instructions. And so they just experience these instructions on their own, and now they're well poised to revise those instructions in formative assessments for their own students. We did the same thing for the summative assessments. Again, you can see there, an important thing is whether you give people two big variables creating summative assessments is whether or not you show students the correct response, which potentially can compromise your assessment. So we had them experience time limited and no feedback versus unlimited time where they got to see their responses afterwards. And then again, same way, have them create the virtual summative assessments afterwards using a template and step by step. So same process through all the modules. What do we conclude? Well, the Course Development Academy was a huge success. These 150 teachers did indeed get together and create 40 brand new courses that are now open sourced and freely available to teachers across the state of Indiana. We concluded that this new approach to asynchronous PD really works, this introduce, experience, template, steps. Social annotation, I can't recommend it enough. It's a really easy way to foster good asynchronous interaction that is productive and disciplinary. We think that expansive framing works especially well, where we just have students rank the relevance of different elements of knowledge and find connections with people, places, and topics and times beyond the boundaries of the course. And then instructor feedback should position learners as actually authors of new insights and new ideas. We want to recommend that people consider formative self-assessments. If they're done right, students can really learn a great deal without taking a valuable private time of interacting with the instructor. We also think you should consider automated time-limited summative quizzes. These happen automatically. If you include challenging sort of best answer items where more than one answer appears plausible to the less knowledgeable students, and you Google your items to make sure that they're not readily searchable, you can actually come up with pretty reliable scores that are valid estimates of likely transfer to future settings. So that's it. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.